Are you from the UK and considering an autism or an ADHD assessment and diagnosis potentially? Well, this video is going to summarize really quickly the process that I went through. I got diagnosed with autism 3 years ago, I think it was, and I'm going to tell you and talk you through my process. It's something that I do with clients often because I do attract a neurodivergent clientele, probably 90, possibly even higher percentage of my clients are neurodivergent. So I just thought, you know what? I think lots of people need to know this information. So I'm going to give it to you. The first thing that I'm going to say is that if you are looking at this video, you have probably already done this beginning part, but I would say start to compile the evidence. So my journey personally started when school raised that they thought that my son was autistic. And I'd gone down this rabbit hole prior, and I got told by professionals that they didn't think he was because he made eye contact. How ridiculous is that? So I was like, okay, that clearly isn't a thing. And I didn't pursue it any longer. Fast forward 5 years, and again, professionals are saying that he's autistic. So I said, okay, please do inform me as to why you think he's autistic. So autistic of me. And they started to say the things that they noticed about him. And I'm baffled at this point because I'm thinking, but all of those things are just normal. And I say normal like this, but I mean like, what's that flagging up? Because I don't think that any of those behaviours are peculiar because I do them all. And my mum. And it just obviously runs in the family. So I'm like, I'm not too sure. However, I'm somebody who, although I always question it, I trust their professional judgment on something. And I was like, let me go away and research. So they said something to me that was quite profound, and I'm so glad they did. They said he's got more of a female presentation of autism. So I went down the rabbit hole of looking at female autism presentations and how different they are and how the DSM-5 had been updated. So, long story short, I began to compile evidence. I can do another video on this. I just don't want this video to be too long because ultimately I'm just trying to help you explore this avenue and what you can do to go ahead and assist yourself with this. So I began to compile the evidence. And once I'd compiled it, and when I say I had a massive folder full of evidence, I was like, okay, I am going to research how I would go about it. I knew that the NHS, it was such a long waiting list that I was like, okay, I'm going to have to probably potentially go down a different avenue here. I couldn't afford private at the time. So I looked at something called the right to choose. The right to choose is basically where you, because the services are so stretched and they need to kind of outsource, they will pay for your private assessment by somebody who is qualified to do the assessment. There are many out there. If you want me to do a video on the ones that are out there, because I know that the waiting list for each is different, what I will do is I will do another video on that. But I went with Psychiatry UK. So what I ended up doing is I printed off the forms, which was basically my right to choose. And I also compiled and took my evidence with me to a doctor's appointment. And I said, this is the situation that I'm in. This is the evidence that I've got, this lifelong evidence that I've got. And this is also my right to choose pathway. So autistic. And can you push that forward? They literally, I don't think they would have done. I had a really, really nice doctor. She was very supportive. And she was like, yeah, you've done your research. But they wouldn't have had enough room to push back on this because I'd literally covered every base. Make sure that you follow it up. Because ultimately what will end up happening, potentially you will fall through cracks that you don't know that you've fallen through. For example, I originally got referred to somewhere called Lanc UK due to them being found not to offer an adequate service. I think that's what it was. They basically got shut down, but that's where I'd been referred to. So if I hadn't have known that and chased that up, I would have probably just got lost in the system and had to restart the whole process again. So just make sure that you're regularly following up with your doctor where the referral's at until you ultimately will get either a message or a phone call saying that you are on the portal and in the waiting area to be assessed. When this happens, usually you'll be sent forms, which is extensive. So again, if you are autistic and ADHD actually, and you suffer with burnout or maybe procrastination or anything like that, I would schedule, and again, this is important to me, in my mind, how many I'm going to do a day until when I've achieved it, so that I'm not burning myself out whilst I'm also working and being a mum and being a wife and all these other things. So what I did is I did a section of it a day until it was complete, and I completed it relatively quickly because I have this thing where it's like pending in my body if I've not completed something until it's done. So I ultimately had to get out of the way, otherwise everything else just felt like it was on pause as well. So then you will also have an informant report. An informant report is basically somebody who's known you lifelong, so usually since you was a child, usually a parent, but it can be somebody else who's also known you lifelong who can inform them of answers to the questions. And from that, you will eventually get an assessment. The assessment, depending on the waiting list, will, be however long it was. I think mine was about a year, maybe just under. And then somebody thoroughly assesses you based off your answer to your question. They might digress and ask for more information on certain things. And then they will basically say whether you do have autism or whether you have ADHD. For autism in particular, what level that you are. And ultimately what care package you need, obviously depending on what they find. And sometimes they might go away. I know sometimes that's happened to people that I know where they're not too sure. So they go away, they reflect on the evidence that you've compiled, the other potential things that it could be, because these people are psychiatrists, they are qualified psychiatrists. So they know the multiple things and the multiple presentations usually. And then they will either come back and tell you, or if they think it's evident enough, like on mine, she told me before, literally at the end, she was like, I literally know that you are absolutely autistic. And then ultimately you have your diagnosis. And you might wonder, why is a diagnosis important? And I have done a video on that on my YouTube, if that is of interest to you. But for so many reasons, to me personally, it changed my life. Because it changed my understanding of myself. I wasn't seeing myself through this lens of deficiency anymore. I was seeing myself through this lens of understanding. And I understood now why my mental health deteriorated so rapidly in a way that I couldn't access life as a teenager, and everybody else seemed to get along fine. Things that I did, like I remember just cutting the world off. And because my mental health was so bad, and I cut off a really good friend. And I have since apologized to her for doing that. And it wasn't that I cut her off, I just stopped answering calls. And I just went into this dark pit of shame and spiraling. And it's really helped me see that in a new light, that actually I was dealing with something that I didn't even know that I was dealing with. And that is the reason why I am such an advocate for mental health. That is the reason why I've gone into being a psychotherapist. That is the reason why I specialize in the areas of trauma that I do, and why I attract a neurodivergent clientele, and why I've gone into positions in schools that attract that same thing. It helped me make sense of things in a way that if I didn't have that diagnosis, I would never have been able to make sense of. And again, there are many other reasons why I believe that a diagnosis is really important, but that is just one of them. I hope this has been helpful. Please let me know if you've got any other questions that I've not answered. And if you spent a lifetime feeling different, excluded, ostracized in whatever way, and I've kind of met that criteria on many forms as a consequence of that, of experienced trauma, then I'm your guy. And if that interests you, then please do come and join our community of people, because we would love to have you. Comment different below if that's you, because I want you to start feeling seen, and I want you to understand yourself in a way that you've never understood yourself before.